At the beginning of this, maybe I was more skeptical. As the days have gone on, I'm not sure what I think anymore.
I felt that maybe it wouldn't affect me if I personally didn't believe in it.
So, knowing what you know now, would you still get cursed?
I'm seeking out a curse, a hex to put on myself. Despite the warnings, I'm investigating the real-world effects of dark magic.
Looks like you have a lot of love and a lot of opportunity. You are going to cause damage to that.
I'm going to enter into a pact with Satan.
Wyong is pretty much the epicenter of all black magic. People are very scared to even talk about it.
I have this physical feeling that something bad is coming. What have I done?
You're going to have to find faith in this in order to undo it.
That was the trailer for the feature documentary A Cursed Man, available on VOD. And this is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week, I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. Joining us today is filmmaker Liam Le Guillou, who, or was, a cursed man. Despite many warnings to the contrary, Liam actually underwent a Hoodoo Curse, submitted to a dark tantric ceremony, and literally made a blood pact with Satan, all on camera. Coming in as an open-minded skeptic, Liam soon learns there truly are consequences for his actions. A life-changing experience. Liam Le Guillou, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. We're talking about your film that's releasing today on VOD, actually. By the time people see this, it will definitely have been released. It's called A Cursed Man. Had its theatrical premiere this past weekend, I guess, in LA. So congratulations on that. A Cursed Man. How we usually start these off is we ask the filmmakers to give us a synopsis, and I don't think it's giving anything away, any spoilers here to say that you are the cursed man in this film. But why don't you tell our listeners and viewers, what is A Cursed Man all about?
Okay, so A Cursed Man is a documentary film based on the idea of what would happen if you willingly allowed someone to put a curse on you. And that's exactly what I did. I traveled around the world trying to find authentic magical practitioners to see if they would put a curse on me and what would happen.
Okay, so that leads me to my second question. It's a rhetorical at first, because you won't be able to answer this, but are you the bravest or craziest guest we've ever had on? You can't say, you've not seen who, we don't know who we've had, but I'm not the only one. I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard that, right? In fact, many of your subjects in the film say the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone seems to want to ask that question. You know, what on earth was I thinking? I think I go into it as a skeptic, to a degree, an open-minded skeptic. I would say. I think I've always been fascinated by this world, but I go into it with a skeptical point of view, and I think my viewpoint has changed quite a bit having done this.
So going in, did you question your sanity, or were you just thinking, this is kind of a lark, really?
Well, as I said, I'm an open-minded skeptic, so I'm open-minded to the world, this type of phenomena. But I really didn't think if I went looking for a curse, something really terrible was going to happen to me. I didn't really believe other people have this power and ability to be able to do anything to me. So, I felt like I was probably pretty safe, and it would be a fascinating journey. I think as I went along, things changed, and the story got a bit darker.
Right. Well, yeah, we'll get to that. I'm sure. So explain to our viewers. I think for those who haven't seen it yet, I mean, incredible scenes. It's just incredible cinematography and things that I don't think many people would have ever expected to see. But you actually receive a curse. Let's put it that way.
He could curse you with stupidity, but we think you got that down.
I never quite know what the difference between voodoo and hoodoo is, but it is some hoodoo shaman priest or whatever you actually find someone, because many of them say they won't do it, right? They're not willing to take you to the dark world.
A curse could end your life. You're literally begging the devil to knock on your door just to prove to you that God's real. Y'all better not call me at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about this man is dead. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. The hardest thing about making this film was actually trying to find anyone who would put a curse on me, because across the board, everywhere I went, everyone said their magical practice is not about doing harm. It's not this Hollywood, we're all out there just to hurt people. It's all about positives and helping people. So for me to go in and say, hey, I'm looking for a curse, was kind of crazy to them and really difficult. But what I would say is there is an element of being able to create curses and hexes in a number of these practices. And it's less about doing harm on people for, nefarious reasons. It's more of a sense of self-protection. It's a tool that they have in their own tradition for their own self-protection.
Right. So how do you start feeling once you've got this curse? I mean, is it? We see it on you. It's filmmaker led, right? You're in front of the camera for most of this, if not all. So we do see it. I do encourage people to watch the film, obviously. But how were you? How were you starting to feel as this was carrying on from this first curse that we see actually carried out?
Yeah, well, it was fascinating. When the first person who put a curse on me was a chap called Sen Elias in New Orleans, and he's a hoodoo practitioner. And he puts, when I met him, he was just a wonderful, warm chap. We had a great conversation. We really talked about his practice. Going through that, then it was fascinating to me how his demeanor and his energy changed when he was working a dark magic curse. It got really dark in the room, metaphorically, and it was quite scary. At that point, I started to feel, hey, this isn't a joke anymore. That he's taking this really seriously.
Evil.
That must be quite seductive.
That's the power you're calling on. The devil, right? Quite seductive.
He's putting a huge amount of energy into it. And something about that starts to reflect onto you, and you start to think, oh, shoot, what have I done?
you can curse on this podcast, but yes, whatever you actually said.
Oh shit was what I said, yeah.
But that wasn't enough.
I mean, that's the thing. So, I mean, it was several weeks after that before I go looking for anything else. But at the same time, I had this idea. The filmmaker in me had this idea. I wanted to see multiple curses and what that would look like. Again, going back to that original idea that I didn't think it would affect me anyway. But even in the few weeks leading up before I went off to India, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then Mexico, things started to happen. I think it started in my dreams first. So that's an indication of subconscious potentially. And it's also where the magic practitioners said I would start to experience it. But I started to have terrible, terrible dreams. And, that sense of not sleeping, the sense of anxiety that was starting to seep into me, was starting to have an effect on me. Maybe not tremendously, because I was still looking for another curse, but certainly enough.
Okay. But even though it's having this impact on you, you go off to India, right? And so you search for tantrics that aren't supposed to be around anymore. They practice the dark art, so you have to go out to the jungles somewhere.
Right.
But there you seemed kind of like you're in a trance.
Yeah, that was a crazy thing. I think in a weird way, that was one of the scarier moments of the film from a production's point of view. We were concerned. We found someone who was not really known to anyone in the community. He was had come through this area, and other magic practitioners in the area told us, hey, look, don't go running off with people you don't know into the woods at night.
It's just what your mom would have told you. Anyway.
Exactly. It's not a good idea. So we did it anyway. My crew and I had a very serious talk the night before, like, is this safe? And can we do it? We decided as a team that we wanted to go up the next day. And it was interesting. It wasn't the dark magic practice that I'd expected, but it opened up my mind. I think it was one of the first times in a runaway moment of making this film that I really meditated. And as part of the ritual was a kind of a meditation. I really meditated on what it is I'm looking for and what's coming. And so it started to open up my mind that maybe I've been more into this subject than perhaps I'd even let on to myself in the past.
Right. Okay. And yet that's still not enough. So you search out this Mexican shaman who actually, is worship the right word? He worships Satan.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that was, again, I mentioned before, it feels like a bit of a runaway train. Making this film, I had this idea I wanted to do and experience these things. Now at this point, I'm starting to feel the dreams are getting worse. I'm starting to feel more and more cautious. I'm getting more and more, just traveling to Mexico and being on roads in small cars and things. Lots of things is on my mind. And then we find this opportunity that this gentleman who's a brujo who practices, worships Satan, essentially. And that's his magic of choice. And he says, I can introduce you to Satan, in which you will make a blood pact with Satan yourself and get to wish this dark thing upon myself. And, I think there's a part of me that maybe has started to disassociate with myself a little bit and just felt like I just had to keep seeing this through, and regardless of what was coming next.
Because most of the time when people say you're going to be making a blood pact with Satan, you go running, right, in the other direction. But
You should, and it really was a situation where we had to travel across a lake in what was probably the smallest boat in Mexico, but we travel across a lake, climb a jungle, and then we enter into Satan's cave, which was streaming with thousands of bats just pouring out of this thing, and then we had to go in there, and bats were bouncing off of our heads. It was a hugely atmospheric, very revered location. And at that point, I just kind of, as I said, I think I disassociated a bit and went with the ritual.
Señor Satán, Lucifer, presentamos a este hermano, con tu fuego purifica.
I think there was something in my gut that was saying, I'm supposed to be doing this, even though I feel like it might be the wrong choice.
All right, so hold on to that thought, and let's give everyone I think everyone probably needs a break at this stage after all that we've discussed. But there's more to come, certainly, about this incredible story. So we'll be right back with Liam Le Guillou, director of Accursed Man. Check it out on VOD. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or X to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. We're here with Liam Le Guillou, director of Accursed Man. It's on VOD and released in LA, a theatrical release last weekend. You've already talked, you said earlier on, so now you've literally made a blood pact with the devil, and we see this. This is, it's not just you say you did. We see the whole thing on unfold on camera. But you were saying early on that your views and things about how about all this have changed, and you'd already talked about what started happening, and you have others who are not involved in, who actually refuse to give you curses, who said, you'll start hearing this in your dreams, and, you'll start having bad dreams and stuff. So what really, we do see it. I know you have an accident, a bike accident, things like this, but I mean, maybe you can describe for us even more. What were you really, were you feeling tormented? What was going on inside you?
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say it's really hard. It was hard visually to kind of show this
Exactly.
in the film because it's an internal struggle, and I wasn't documenting every single hour of my life, but there were lots and lots of things that were happening. Like I said, the dreams got to a point where they were becoming terrible, and I was really suffering from a lack of sleep. So that has an effect on you both mentally and physiologically as well. I actually had the first dream I've ever had where I woke up with sleep paralysis, and I swore I could see a shape in the doorway of our bedroom. That was terrifying to me. I've never had that before. It's a known phenomenon. It happens to people. But the fact that I have brought this onto myself was scary. And then I was having other issues as well. I started having terrible headaches, some of the worst headaches I've ever experienced, migraine-like but different, to a point where I had to go to the hospital and get x-rays to make sure in my bike accident I hadn't done something to my neck that I hadn't realized.
Right.
That wasn't the case, and they couldn't understand where the headaches were coming from. So these things were happening, and moreover, the sense of anxiety that you live with, it's really hard to explain when you expect everything bad to start happening to you. If my wife came home late from work, I was worried. Was there a traffic accident? Had something happened? When you start to expect that, your heart rate changes. I was measuring my own resting heart rate, and I think it had adapted during that period. So things were happening, and it got to the point for me where I was thinking, this is happening to me. I'm suffering real effects now. And whether or not that's magic or psychological, I think the interesting question is, they might be the same thing.
Right. So, and you mentioned your wife, because that was the other thing they warned you about, right? That your family could be affected by this, all this. I mean, how was she and others being affected by all this? I mean, besides seeing, obviously, you starting to be tormented.
My wife didn't suffer any effects negative other than seeing me and seeing what I was going through. And so that was an issue. Now, I will say my wife didn't want to be too involved in the film, but she is in it for a number of times because it's an important part of our life. But my wife is actually a mental health therapist, so that's handy to have. But so she didn't believe in the magical side or the spiritual side of this journey, and she didn't expect me to suffer anything at all from it either, like myself. But she then was mindful, and she was saying, hey, you're starting to express symptoms of someone who is suffering from psychological stress right now. And you need to you need to do something about that for yourself.
What's your conclusion? Or are you still discerning? Is it, what is this that you went through? Because we haven't even talked about how you, we'll get to that maybe in a minute, but how you've tried to overturn the curse and everything. But do you think there's something there in your opinion, or you think or does it matter? You just think it's all part and parcel, basically?
It's such a huge and complicated answer, but to simplify it as much as I can, in the one hand, you can look at this and say, well, it was all psychological. You feared this thing happening, and psychologically that was happening. That's true to a degree. People who come from a spiritual or magical practice, they would see it differently, and they would see something else. And I can't say that isn't true either. What I would say is whatever happened, I felt like I was under a curse, whatever that means, whether it was psychological or not. I felt that. And then I began to have physiological and psychological effects from that. So isn't that magic? I mean, we can call it psychology, but maybe psychology is a modern day term for what we would have called magic 200 years ago. So maybe there's a huge crossover on those two things. And then there's another element of maybe I felt like some of this was a little bit outside of just my brain. I didn't 100% feel like it was all just in my mind. I'm not going to go too far and say, I was being attacked by demonic forces. I'm not going there, but I will say it did feel more than just in my mind at times. So I am open to what the magical people told me that would affect me and what they were, what they believed in. And I would say, maybe a better way to answer that is, would I get cursed again? And I would say, absolutely no way.
Well, speaking of the curse, so you actually write this note, right, to the devil, and you blur it out.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. Now I assume it was more that because you kept going on about, and I kind of understand where you're coming from. If you'd asked for something good to happen, then if you found a $10 bill on the street, I think that's even the example you gave in one scene. Well, how would I know that that's just not good luck, right? So you needed that was the other reason to go the curse route, I guess. But
yeah.
I assume it was more than lose my suit at the dry cleaners. I mean, are you at liberty to say what, or why did you blur it out?
Yeah, so that's important. So eventually I go back to the original people that I found on my journey to look for magic. And I went back to them to ask for some help. Hey, I needed to get out of this. I needed to undo this. And one of the things they said to me was, A, you're an idiot. B, what you've done is actually really dangerous. And they were genuinely concerned they would not be able to undo it. And they said the words that I wrote in that pact with Satan was so powerful, and the words themselves are the bind, and the words themselves are the intention. And if I share that with the world, we're undoing their work to try and undo it. So they said, look, you need to keep that to yourself. Because we don't want that being in this kind of spiritual echo chamber that hasn't gone away. And so it was important that they said to me, do not show that letter. So the compromise was to blur out the exact kind of desire I had put down, dark desire, I would say. And so, so I am keeping that to myself. And again, look, if I was 100% skeptical, I'd be comfortable to say, hey, I asked for this and it doesn't matter. I'm not going to take any chances now, honestly. I'd rather not.
You still have the note, or didn't it get torn up and burned?
Yeah, so as part of the ritual that they performed, we destroyed it,
Right. Okay. Wow. I think this is never before seen film, isn't it? I mean, nothing like this is, I think, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. I'd never seen or heard of anything like this before. And I went into it with the idea that I just wanted to see magical practice. I'm fascinated by the subject and I wanted to see that. And I'd never seen anyone do anything like this before. And
and not to belabor the point, but the thing is, whatever you think, there was something there that because you went to this, it was basically a coven of witches, right? Who overturned overturned the curse, right?
Right.
It was both, right? Yeah, it was both, because it was both the Hoodoo and the Satanic.
That's right.
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds crazy.
Two curses.
So you just, was that as cathartic of an experience as it looked?
It was wonderful. I mean, I think on that moment, actually, more than anything, I fully forgot there were any cameras around or involved on this. I fully let go and really went into it. Now, the leader of that coven, Griffin, had said to me, look, if you really want to undo this, you're instrumental in believing and having the power to do it. So I thought, look, I could go into this half-hearted and potentially live with these curses for the rest of my life, or I could potentially look foolish on camera and just go all in and give everything I had to try and get rid of it. And honestly, it was more important to me to try and get rid of this than it was to look silly on camera or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So how did this film come about? I mean, besides you deciding I'm a filmmaker and I'm going to just chase this down. I mean, I want to look into the nature of magic.
Right. Well, I mean, as I said, I've always been interested in the subject, and I had a conversation with a friend, and that friend was saying, I don't believe in any of that stuff. It's all rubbish. It's all mumbo jumbo. It's just, nothing. Right. And I said to him, well, would you let someone put a curse on you? And he thought about it for a moment and said, no way. And I thought, well, why is that? Why is it
Right,
that even people who are very skeptical, when it comes down to it, if you say, would you let someone put a curse on you? People, 9 out of 10 people would say, no way. Maybe 10 out of 10.
Yeah, right.
So to me, that was fascinating. I just saw something in that I'd never seen before. And I thought, well, hey, famous last words, what's the worst that can happen, right?
Well, so did you produce this independently? Because it seems like something that
Yeah.
the streamers would be all over.
Yeah, it was an independently produced idea. I'm a big, as a filmmaker, this is my second feature documentary. And,
Right.
I've worked on a couple of other narrative films as a cinematographer. And,
Right.
the state of independent film right now it's interesting that honestly, the filmmakers, the directors, and the people who make the film are the last to see any of the results or benefits, proceeds of those films. It's a tough time for independent filmmakers. And, I've been essentially screwed over a couple of times already.
Really?
So I found an investor who believed in the project. Bravely, I think, a man getting cursed. I mean, that's a risky investment. And
Right.
and we agreed to actually work on a self-distribution model because there are routes to take the film to market now. So we've released, as you would through any distributor, on Apple TV and Amazon Prime and all the good places. But we're actually in control of the film ourselves. So I'm excited for that from the business side of this, that we're trying to be more in control of our own product.
Okay, so what's the difference between you doing it and then going through a distributor? Is it the distributor's got the marketing heft or whatever to get the word out? Is that the big difference?
Yeah, the big difference, it all comes down to marketing. How much can they market your film? But then you're in a trust exercise of, will that distributor report correctly? How much money will they spend on marketing? And so how much do you get back later in the day? And my experience is it's been little. So going into this, it's not if you're going to self-distribute and if you're going to go down that model, you can't just think about what's the film budget. You actually have to know what's our marketing budget at the other side of this too. And fortunately, my investor and executive producer, Michael Robbins, he said, okay, if I invest in this for your budget, we need that again for marketing as a minimum in order for us to get this film out. And he came on board on that. And so, which was amazing. And a slight magical story for you to bring business and magic together is that I reached out to Michael on LinkedIn, and he was the first person I reached out to as an investor looking to see if there was any interest in this film. And the deal was almost done straight away. That's an impossible story in this industry. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, or could be proof you made a deal with the devil.
Potential, right? What did I do?
Yeah, potentially. So, no, that's very interesting. I mean, there's some people watching this saying, wait, I mean, I thought I was going to watch a podcast about the devil and Voodoo. Now we're talking about film distribution. But no, that's very interesting because I do work with some film companies, and I do see it all the time. Oh, well, we need to get someone, every time you get someone on board, your share is cut in half usually, roughly.
Right. Right.
And I think people are just at this point happy to get paid, be a line in a budget, aren't they?
Right.
And maybe get a small part of the back end. Right.
Yeah. It's tough. It's really tough for filmmakers and indie filmmakers. I mean, I've been making films for quite a long time now, and I have a lot of good, really great filmmaker friends who have kind of given up on this dream and have fallen by the wayside because it's just so tough for independent filmmakers. So, I mention this because I think there's a route for people to try and be more in control of their own destiny, as it were.
That's great to know. And I think it's because, see, it's just personally, or some people I've worked with, we do feel like this is an industry just ripe for disruption, right? But how do you go about it? I mean, I think that's the issue. There's so much inertia. I say inertia, a lot of things are changing all the time, but something's not changing. The one thing that's not changing, which is filmmakers, the independents, certainly not getting anything for their efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something has to change, or else we're going to be stuck with, no new content and no new ideas. And one thing I would say about this film is, repeatedly, people have said to me, hey, Liam, that's a really big concept movie and it's original. You've come up with an original concept. And, other people are having those original concepts too, and they're not getting the chance to make them. So, we all know that Hollywood's churning out the same old right now.
Yeah, and docs, it's all true crime and celebs and sports and or the perfect the sweet spot for them all is the one that's all three, right? Right. But it doesn't seem like anything else is getting made.
Yeah, that's it. And for me, like, I'm a huge horror movie fan. I always have been as a kid. So my natural inclination in stories is to look for dark, mysterious stories. That's what interests me. And then I also like a little adventure thrown into that. There's, grew up watching Indiana Jones like anyone, right? So now I figure, well, what would happen if we made documentaries that have this dark, mysterious interest, throw in a little adventure in there and see what we get. So that's definitely what excites me as a filmmaker. And if I'm lucky, I hope to keep making films like that.
Well done. We hope you do too. Just out of curiosity, what's one of your favorite horror films?
Oh,
it's hard. I know it's always a tough
probably
question.
Related to the subject though. I'm the old school religious horror, The Exorcist, The Omen, and then classics like The Thing. I mean, older movies great. I mean, Hereditary recently is one of my favorite all-time horrors.
Right.
So but there's a theme there, I think.
No, I'm not into horror films myself, but my wife is, and that's when we first got together. Have you ever read the book The Exorcist?
I have, yes.
Yeah, that's that got me. That's what got me interested. I was like, wait a minute, there's more to this than I realized, right?
Absolutely, it's an incredible book. I highly recommend people read it if they haven't already, for sure.
I do too. I haven't read it in 20-something years, but I do highly recommend that you read it. It was, and I haven't been to grad school at Georgetown. We used to go up and down the Exorcist steps all the time. So,
right.
What's next for you?
So again, as I said, I'm interested in this subject of kind of adventure, but I'm also fascinated with psi phenomena stories. So psi is the more science side of this magical story.
Right.
So there's a few things there that I'm interested in that I'm potentially looking at next. But yeah, it's always, we're on launch day today as we speak. I'm going to take a couple of weeks off. I feel like I need a break. My wife wants me to take a break. But then, my head's always spinning for ideas. So I'm sure I'll be back into it soon.
Well, thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of our time. So I just want to thank Liam Le Guillou, director of A Cursed Man. Check it out on VOD. He, I think, would say, definitely don't go out and get yourself cursed. Do avoid it, but do check out the film. So thank you again so much. It was great having you on. Best of luck with the film. I'm sure you'll do well, and hopefully we'll have you on again sometime.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to Factual America. Please subscribe and like us and share us with friends and family. Find us on YouTube, social media, and factualamerica.com. This is Matthew Sherwood, signing off.